You're live.
Hello, and thanks for joining me. This is Wednesday, the 29th of September, and it's our last Wednesday for September. I have some news to share with you about some major changes that we're planning to make moving forward. But before we get to that, I want to spend a little time talking about one of my favorite Walkervillians. So Anne Tyler, who wrote The Accidental Tourist and Breathing Lessons, says about writing, "It's true that it's a solitary occupation, but you would be surprised at how much companionship a group of imaginary characters can offer once you get to know them." And this is totally true of Sue Reynolds, who has been a supporting character in the Walkerville Desires series since Book 1, Return. She's appeared briefly in Book 3, Revelry, Book 4, Resilience. And the truth is, the only book that neither she nor Ted appears in is Book 2, Redemption, for whatever reason. We've published 7 books from the Walkerville Desires series. And of course, Book 7, Rewire, is Ted and Sue's story. They also appear in the yet still in draft form books 8 through 10, and they appear in both Christmas novellas. I'm going to refer back to the Winged Victory that I had the honor of falling in love with when I saw her at the Louvre back in 1995. She stands on the prow of a ship, and she was sculpted in 190 BC. That's a long time ago, huh? BC is before Christ. Her spirit has been the backbone of every story of the Walkerville series, and certainly of every female character from Fiona to Ella, Josie to Martha Janine, Ruth to Leslie to Lorraine to Jerry and Paz, Bee and Becky, Cora Worthy and Lorene, and women you haven't yet met, Nora, Ginny, Maisie. And of course, Sue Reynolds, Pie Lady. She's safe behind that moniker, that symbol that tells the world only part of who she is. We talk about our outward lives and sometimes about our inner lives. Many people live mostly that outwardness. They have that need for adulation, recognition, admiration, and acknowledgement from the outside world, assuring themselves of their place. Some people have a tendency to lead internal lives, some out of necessity and some out of choice. Some people don't know they have a choice until that longing for connection wakes them up. Sue actually made a choice to live a solitary life away from people, from fear, and also to keep intact her deceased husband's memory. She hides herself in her baker's role of pie maker, infusing her creations with that extra special ingredient that all great cooks add to their food, love. There's a lot of love in her heart for people, and she doesn't know quite how to reach those folks except to just bake pies. She has a great deal of love for her cat, Mrs. Many Colors, who is practically forced on her by Josie and Al. Mrs. Many Colors may have been the first being she has loved in a long, long time. Her cat was certainly the first safe being she loved. So what about her choice to stay solitary? To be that person who bakes pies out of her home kitchen, that person whom everyone in Walkerville knows about. The reason why kitchens keep a gallon of vanilla ice cream in their freezer just in case Sue Reynolds pie shows up. In Book 4, Resilience, Josie's tossing salads for dinner and Ruth notices dessert. On the counter were 2 Sue Reynolds apple pies. Ruth knew there'd be vanilla bean ice cream in the freezer. And in Book 6, Renaissance, the first time Torquil is invited to the Miyoshi home for dinner, dessert time looks like this. Paz made coffee while Jerry searched the freezer for vanilla ice cream. I think every Walkerville family keeps a spare quart of vanilla ice cream just in case someone brings them a Sue Reynolds pie, Jerry joked as she held up a quart of ice cream. Sue has no idea how Walkerville feels about her pies. But enough about her baking abilities. What prompts that winged victory mindset for her? What moves Sue from that isolation, that place of creating for others to enjoy, while her life remains stuck? In Chapter 9 of Book 7, Rewire, How Long is a Full Day, she has this inner dialogue with herself that's life-changing. She's had a long day of things to do. Sue checked and rechecked her list, making sure she didn't forget anything. She had checked off each item. She deserved to feel good about herself. She wanted to feel proud that she'd accomplished everything on her list. Instead, she took a deep breath, trying to identify the feeling she was experiencing. Lonely. The words sucked the life out of her. The feelings clamoring to the surface were too dangerous, too full of longing and lack. Sue wondered what her life would feel like to have friends to laugh with or do things with, friends to confide in. And what I love about the winged victory image is that sense of movement that I get from her when I see her. I see her moving forward. She's action oriented, right? We in this day and age we talk about people taking action. When Sue has her moment of clarity, she inventories her short life, chronicling that life with a narcissistic mother and all that entailed, especially about not trusting people, women. The big V word for Sue, like a lot of us, was vulnerable. For Sue, that meant weak. For many of us, when we face vulnerability for the first time, we're terrified about being found out. To be inadequate, not good enough, just plain not enough. Instead, as she meets women who support her, who accept her, who care for her, she realizes that she would not be that person who had friends and love in her life without first allowing herself to be terrified, without letting herself feel inadequate and not enough. She had to face her demons before her true self could surface. In her 2014 TED Talk on the power of vulnerability, Brené Brown says, "Owning our story can be hard, but not nearly as difficult as spending our lives running from it. Embracing our vulnerabilities is risky, but not nearly as dangerous as giving up on love and belonging and joy, the experiences that make us the most vulnerable. Only when we are brave enough to explore the darkness will we discover the infinite power of our light." And this is the chasm that Sue had to go through, that most of us have to go through to understand the power of our vulnerability in order to step forward into our own light, into our own power, into our love, and into action. Thank you. Thanks for joining me. And so before I go, I promised to have you take a look at some plans for October and beyond. And the reason why I started doing these at 11 o'clock at night, California time, was because that's the hour that I'm up writing, researching, doing other work in my creative process, listening to music, finding poems, quotes and things like that. It turns out to be sort of inconvenient because I lose the thread of my own writing because I'm so involved in these events. So I'm going to cut back to doing one live chat per week. We'll spend a lot more time together, probably 20 minutes to half an hour, and we'll see how that works out. We'll be doing that on Wednesdays starting in October. And perhaps the biggest news of all is that I'm going to be doing these at a completely different time of day. Next week, I'm going to be doing the live chats at 1 p.m. Pacific time. And you may, more people may be able to join us. I will be back on Friday night at this time before we switch to the new schedule. I've got some news to share with you about the novella that we're coming up soon as a special holiday gift for my Walkerville readers. So thank you for joining me, and remember to check just below this video. YouTube counts everything, so it means a lot if you give us a thumbs up, and it's really helpful if you subscribe to my channel by clicking that big red button. If you have questions or comments, there are links to my Facebook and Instagram and my email address. Remember, AC is archiving all of these. Check the playlist on my page. Plus, the direct link for Friday night's live stream is there too. Hope to see you then, and thank you so much for joining me tonight.